I don't hear words they're saying, only the echo.
We all know that the need for more conversation, understanding, tolerance, and inclusion around mental health is paramount. On January 25th, it is the annual Bell Let's Talk Day, and this evening we are joined by one of its ambassadors, Natalie Harris. Welcome to What She Said.
Thank you so much.
For those who don't know your story, Natalie, you are a first responder in Barrie.
Correct.
What happened to you?
Well, I've been a first responder for actively for about 11 years, and as my career progressed, I unfortunately got sick, and I didn't really know what post-traumatic stress injury or disorder was before because we didn't learn about it in school very much. And I did a call in 2012 in Barrie at a travel lodge where there was a double murder, and it was part of a satanic cult. It was very horrible, but the worst part was that the murderer was my patient, and I developed what's called a moral injury, and I didn't know what that was. And 2 years later, I needed to testify, and my post-traumatic stress injury symptoms just really started to emerge, and it caused a lot of darkness in my life.
So what happened then?
Well, after the call, I could tell that I was not coping as well with life, and work was more difficult to go to, and I would have anxiety at home and noise sensitivities that never bothered me before. So I started dealing with that with alcohol, and I would try to numb the confusion and the pain that I was going through. And slowly over the 2 years until I testified, it just progressed. I started abusing over-the-counter drugs, my prescription drugs. And then the day that I testified, I came home and I overdosed. So that was the beginning of really knowing that I was so sick. And then that spiraled into basically everything that's in that book. So getting better and recovering and learning how to talk about mental illness.
Let me ask you, during that period of time, did you feel that you could reach out to anyone, or was this something you just felt that you needed to handle on your own?
That's a great question. I first was so afraid to reach out to anyone.
Why?
The stigma. The stigma of mental illness is still so prevalent. And as a first responder, I was successful, and I had self-stigmatized myself, where I thought if I couldn't do my job, that must mean I'm weak. That must be something is wrong. And it wasn't that. So I reached out to my best friend, which was really helpful, and then my boyfriend at the time, and they were very supportive, so I was lucky. But the biggest thing that I reached out to was the world with my blog. So that was a big leap of faith. I didn't know how well that would be received, but I was tired of hiding. I was tired of hiding behind the stigma.
And when was the blog?
That started in 2014.
Okay, so but you still went through some time suffering.
Yes.
And what about at work?
Work was actually the one place that I didn't necessarily experience my depression or my anxiety. And I think that's because I was busy. My mind was busy. But the thing that would progress was I would drink so much when I got home. And that would affect my ability to go to work. And then my anxiety got so bad to the point where I couldn't put my uniform on. I was just so afraid of what I would see and what I would hear and everything.
One would think that in that job, with other people going through pretty much the same thing that you did, that there was a high likelihood that a lot of you would have suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, that would be a place to talk, and yet you didn't feel comfortable.
That's right. It's slowly changing. We have a really good positive momentum with opening up and talking, and it's great. But no, I think the sad part about being a first responder is we have this false kind of picture of ourselves that we're supposed to be superhuman and we're supposed to be able to tolerate the things we see, and that's not true.
We're supposed to be heroes.
We're supposed to be heroes, and we're human, and we are so blessed with being able to affect people's lives on such an amazing level, but it involves a lot of witness to trauma, and it doesn't matter what uniform you have on, that's going to affect you.
Well, you've exhibited a lot of courage because you started a blog, but you've now written this book, Save My Life School. Tell us about the book.
The book is based on my blog, and it's basically divided into 3 main chapters. The first chapter is everything that I went through before going to rehab. So that's a lot of my dark days. I really try to share what it's like to be inside the mind of someone that battles with mental illness, things like addiction and night terrors and those types of things. It's writing was my way of getting it out, so it was so good. The second part is my journey through rehab. So I went to Guelph, Homewood, and then after rehab is life now. So the third part's just about what kind of tools do I use to live now? How do I survive through the triggers I still experience, and what do I do now?
How are you now?
I'm doing really well. I've learned that I can't go back on the road as a paramedic, unfortunately. I went back in June and I relapsed. But I'm grieving the loss of my career. I am getting a service dog, which will help me with my social anxiety, and I'm good. I have a great family. I have such great support. Overall, I'm healthier than I probably have ever been. I just know that work is a big trigger for me.
Let me ask you, if we had an environment, a world where people were not afraid and there was no stigma in talking about mental health, do you think that you would be way better now?
Absolutely. No question.
Those 2 years of hiding it and...
Absolutely. And that's what this is all about, right? Is talking and now listening and being able to support people. And it's funny. I would have patients with mental illness and I would encourage them to talk. And I was sitting there in the ambulance and petrified to talk myself. So eventually I think we're going to have a much more compassionate world and an understanding of mental illness, and 100% talking is going to help with that.
So what are your tips, or what do you think needs to happen going forward to make a real difference so that someone like you who goes through something like that can get the help and get better right away? And if you could ever get better right away.
What you mean. Yeah, that's another great question. That's a longer answer. In a nutshell, though, we need more resources for our community heroes like first responders and military to get help with trauma experts. So we have some possible therapies, but we have a culture that not everyone understands, and we need the trauma therapists to be able to manage and help us. And it's a long, extensive process. So funding for those types of things and cooperation with WSIB, those things are getting better through different bills that are being passed, but we still have a long way to go.
How can we, common people like me, people like Angelo, people like Brittany, like Alex, what can we do in our little world to make things better?
Write to your MPPs, write to your MPs. Right now we have a federal bill that's tabled. The second reading will be on February 9th in Ottawa. It's called Bill C-211, and MP Todd Doherty from Caribou Prince George is leading the way. You can go to his website and support the bill. And if you wanted to, you can come out on February 9th and sit in the gallery and cheer for the advancement. It's an amazing bill that will really start to develop the foundation of how to support our first responders across the country.
But also we need to become more tolerant of people generally.
Absolutely. We need to know that we're all human. It doesn't matter what background you're from, what education you're from. We all are susceptible to any injury and illness.
Where can we get this book?
You can order it online right now at Indigo and Chapters or Amazon.com. And
The title, once again?
is Save My Life School.
Wonderful. And this should provide some good tips for anyone in the same situation.
I hope so. Thank you.
Natalie Harris, thank you so much for being so brave, for shining a spotlight on an issue that needs attention, and for joining us and sharing your message with our listeners. I'm sure it's not easy telling this story over and over again, but we thank you for it. This is What She Said on The Jewel. Stay with us.